Hey everyone, welcome back. So today we have another video. This is going to be a follow-up to the video that I made the other day about the 1.5 anniversary stream, specifically about the information that they revealed that we were going to be catching up to the CN servers. Along with that information, they also said they're going to be giving us a lot of tickets over the next couple months to kind of help make up the difference for the accelerated patch schedule. And that's going to put people in a position where they have a lot of extra tickets on and a bunch of upcoming characters to choose from. So in this video, we're going to talk about all that. We're going to talk about all the upcoming characters that we don't have yet, starting with the characters coming in the next event, Dawnforger, kind of their meta relevance, the relative strengths to each other, and kind of where they fit in for team building. That means the vast majority of the guide will be talking about the new upcoming limited characters, but I will have a section towards the end, and I'll also put it in the timestamps below, that will talk about the characters that will be coming up for reruns, especially on that custom banner where you get to select a character. Some of these are worth grabbing more segments on, and we'll talk about it when we get to that part. Now, before we begin, I want to outline the bigger picture for the game overall. So the game's difficulty is not going up. The end game content is still going to be pretty easy overall, and tryharding is going to be pretty much reserved for people who want to score max in the final end game modes. There's not really any new rewards that are going to be tied to having these characters, right? Like, it's not like going to be a situation where, you know, you need these teams, you need these builds and characters in their high segments to finish the game. I mean, this is all like 100% optional. The game still, even 6 months in the future, according to like what's going on the CN side, it is still a very much like grab who you want, play what you want, have fun. That being said, there is a huge amount of power creep in the game going forward, but weirdly enough, though, it's actually in the player's favor. Units are going to be getting stronger and stronger, and you'll see this as we talk about these characters in the release section. They get more and more powerful, but the enemies all stay about the same difficulty, with the exception of Gunsmoke bosses, which just get millions and millions of more HP. Because once again, they're just kind of there for score maxing for Gunsmoke mode. But the actual normal difficulty of the important endgame modes, which would be, you know, peak value analysis, Gunsmoke, expansion drills, those are all essentially going to stay about the same. The new 2 game modes that are becoming, Liminal Iteration, which is the tower mode in CN, and the Frontier Conquest, which is Gunsmoke 2.0, which they haven't explained whether we're getting that early or not. Neither of those modes really need any of these new units. Like I said, you can still do it with the old units as well. And for the most part, I'm going to try and keep those game modes outside of this discussion. Just know that anything we talk about is going to be applicable to those game modes. You know, Liminal Iteration is going to have a few nuances, but I'll point those out for a specific unit if we need to. There is also a huge change coming in the, quote, near future to the tile system and how the game works. So when that change hits our servers, the entire elemental tile system is getting reworked. There is a very good guide on dandygate.net, and I'll link it here in the comments of this video if you want to look at what all the different elemental reactions for the tiles do. But just know that this does change team building. All of a sudden, tile creation and elemental reactions from these tiles do have a pretty important role in team building. So we don't have that yet. We're just getting the new characters, and they just talked about the new game mode, but we don't have that system. There's really no ETA on that system as well. We'll just have to wait and see. But that is coming in the future, and that, like I said, that will be taken into consideration when I'm making these character suggestions. Finally, the last thing I want to talk about before we actually get into the guide is that for most characters in this game, and going forward, this is very true as well, especially DPS units, they kind of exist in 2 different states. Segment 0 and Segment 6. At Segment 0, a character works just fine. This is what they balance the heroic modes around and the rest of the normal gameplay. The characters will operate no problem. However, at Segment 6, their damage contribution scales so exponentially compared to their Segment 0 forms that most of the time you're either going to get a character at Segment 0 or Segment 6. There really isn't any point to getting a character in between. There are a couple people for specific breakpoints, which we'll talk about in their specific parts of this guide. But for the most part, especially DPS characters, like I said, you're usually going to leave them at either 0 or 6. Unfortunately, what this means is now we have to compare characters twice. We have to compare Segment 0 versions of them to other Segment 0s, and then we have to compare Segment 6s to other Segment 6s. This muddies the conversation a little bit and makes it a little harder, but I'm going to do my best to kind of simplify it for you guys and kind of just get you the answers that you need. Just keep in mind that when you see people discussing these things online, they're, sometimes making apples to oranges comparisons. For example, a character like Basti, most people will assume that when you have a question like, is Basti good? They're assuming you're talking about her segment 0 version. Meanwhile, if someone says, is Klukai good? They're usually going to assume you're talking about her segment 6 version. So just keep that in mind. It can get a little dicey, but I'll try my best here to outline it as clear as I can. I'm going to do my best to keep this guide focused on the character, whether you should get them, yes or no, and any important breakpoints that you're going to want related to that character, whether that is a segment 2 version of the character or a segment 6 version of the character. I'll also try and give you suggestions about whether their weapon is a big deal or not. Okay, really quick though, before we start, one last thing. I'm going to talk about the new free units that we're going to be getting over the next couple months as well. They already talked about Harpsy in the stream. Harpsy is a corrosion debuffing unit that unfortunately just is not very good. She's much like Bethilda, Papasha, Faye, and the rest of them. All the free units have the curse of being free, therefore they just are very weak. They're very weak, and they have kind of crappy fortification segments as well that don't really help their strength. Very easily forgettable unit, kind of like just for collection purposes. But she can slot into some corrosion teams if you just need a body to fill. Meanwhile, the other new unit that we will be getting soon is the new version of Nemesis called Nemesis Gnosis. Now, this unit is a much stronger unit. She is the first 45-star upgrade unit that we will be seeing in the game, and she is worthy of it. This unit does a lot of damage. The downside, however, is that her fortification segments are time-gated. You'll be getting them through different activities throughout the game, over the course of several months. So similar to how they've time-gated the segments for, Bethilda and Papasha, it's going to take a little bit to accumulate all of the segments for Nemesis Gnosis. However, she is a much better free unit, and she'll be able to slot into a variety of different teams. Due to the way that her kit works, she's going to be a very flexible unit, so look forward to her. But once again, that's outside the scope of this video. Just, you're getting them for free, don't worry about it. Okay, so finally, with that, we can get into the guide proper. So I'm going to talk about these characters in the order of release, and that'll probably be the order that we get them, with like some small minor variations in it. But I'm going to move one to the front of the line here because she is going to be the new benchmark that pretty much everything is compared against, and that is OTS 14. This character is stupid broken. This character is a design mistake on many levels, and to be honest, I can't believe they released this character. But the reason why this character is so ungodly broken is multiple reasons. The first one is she's an omni element. That means that she fits in literally every team. So it doesn't matter what the team building considerations are, she's going to be able to slot into the team. Any mono element team, any dual element team, she can just go wherever you want. Second of all, her personal DPS is very sizable, just similar to like every other character in the game. When they get segment 6, she does a bucket of damage, but it gets amplified by the third fact, which is that she takes a percentage damage of her teammates and adds that to her personal damage. This makes her incredibly strong and incredibly hard to power creep, because as you add more segments to characters and as your teams get stronger, she is going to get stronger alongside them. If you have a team with one segment 6 character, she's going to be doing a percentage of that character's damage. So let's say she does 1,000,000 damage. She's going to, and your teammate does 1,000,000. She's going to do 1,200,000. If you have a team of all segment 6s, she's going to be doing a percentage of all their damage. So she'll be doing 1,000,000, and every one of her teammates that does 1,000,000 is another percentage that she's going to do. So she'll be doing whatever. 1,000,000 plus 200,000 plus 200,000 plus 200,000 plus 200,000 for every DPS. I'm just using round numbers here. The point is, as the team gets stronger, she gets stronger as well. This is a whale's wet dream. This means the harder you whale and the more characters you get, the stronger this character gets. That also means that the only way you're really going to be able to power creep this character is if you power creep her 5 times in a team. That means the entire team would have to be stronger than the extra damage that she's going to be contributing. It's absolutely bonkers, and to be honest, like I said, I have no idea how they let this one slide. The only lucky thing is that you can only have one of these on your account. Thank God. In addition to that, her weapon is also the stupidest weapon that they've released in a long time. It's an assault rifle, which means it can be used by like almost half the game's roster. It has very powerful base stats, but mostly the calibration effect on it is just it's just insane. Not only does it increase the damage of your active attacks by 20% at its base form, if you have a skill that buffs yourself but doesn't do damage to an opponent, it's going to give you an attack power increase. There are a lot of units that have these types of skills. If your unit can take advantage of this, this weapon becomes best in slot for almost every single assault rifle, because on top of that, the trait for this weapon is also silly. It ignores 20% of the target's defense if you can exploit a weakness, which you probably will. So at base form of this weapon, 20% damage, 10% attack power, which is huge. This is not something you normally see on a rifle or an assault rifle. And then you ignore 20% of their defense. Absolutely busted. You're going to see a lot of people max this out. And in fact, it's not crazy to say that this is probably one of the first weapons that I would actually recommend considering getting to segment 6 or calibration rank 6. This, another mistake. So if you wanted the short version of this guide and you just wanted to know who do I save up for and spend all my tickets on, boom, you're done. See you later. Thanks for coming to the guide. Save all your tickets up for OTS 14. Grab her, max her out, get her weapon, max her weapon out, get 3 of her weapons. I know that's a joke that's been going around, you know, calibration rank 18 on the weapon, get 3 of them. Get 3 assault rifles and calibrate all of them. I'm joking, but I'm kind of not joking. This weapon and this character are stupid. And because of that, that is now going to be the measuring stick that we use for every other character in this guide. Let's move on. So, who are the other characters in this guide? Let's start by talking about Loreley. So Loreley is the first character that we will be getting in part 1 of Dawnforger. She is a fire support character. And the big appeal of Loreley, well, there's 2 big appeals of Loreley, but one of the big appeals of Loreley is that she is another character that generates Ember stacks. Not only does she generate Ember stacks, she also upgrades Embers into a more powerful version of itself. In addition to that, she just has lots of utility. She generates AoE tiles, incineration tiles like Vector does. She does AoE damage. She has a summon pet. She prevents damage to the team from her passive, and she doesn't, while personally contribute a lot of damage, she amplifies a lot of the team's damage. But more importantly than that is that at her second fortification, and this is the big breakpoint for her, her second fortification, her damage buff that normally only applies from Embers to other fire units gets upgraded and now applies to anyone of any element. So no longer is she just locked to the fire team and only upgrading burn damage. She's now upgrading everyone's damage. This is another unit that people kind of consider a universal support. If you can go all the way to her segment 2 and grab that, that allows you so many flexible options when it comes to team building. She can kind of go in any team, and even to this day, on the CN side for a lot of like their leaderboards and stuff, she's kind of like just the de facto 5th slot. Like if you don't really know what support to put into a team build, you just kind of slap her in there. Very powerful unit. Higher segments of her, not really worth considering. They, increase her personal damage a little bit, but nothing too crazy. She's never going to do crazy damage numbers herself. She's mostly there for all the buffs and the tile generation that she does. Her signature weapon is also very strong. If you're going to use her more of as a generic support for multiple different teams, I highly recommend you pick this up as well. The important part about this weapon is that similar to how Springfield works, if she applies a burn buff to a teammate, she's going to be applying attack up too. So once again, now in addition to all the other things that she brings to the table, she can also cover the attack up 2 buff for the whole team. This is very good, very powerful, but not a must-have. If you're going to use her as a generic support, it's more important that you get her first 2 segments. In terms of priority after OTS 14, I would say this is probably one of the other characters you really want to consider saving up and using your tickets for. Even if you don't get all of her segments on the first run of her banner, get her on the second rerun. This is going to apply just so much like utility to your account. Being able to have her just slot in any team along with OTS 14, like that's 2 characters you can kind of just slap anywhere. All of a sudden your teams become way more flexible and it's way easier to build around. There's really not a downside to going with this character, especially for 2 segments. I really highly doubt that you're going to see a replacement for her anytime soon. Next, I want to talk about Cheyanne. So Cheyanne is the second character in the Dawnforger event. She is the second half character, and she is the only physical character from the CN side that we do not have yet. She is a Sentinel unit, which means she's just going to do lots of single target damage. She has lots of defense ignore built into her kit, just like many of the other physical element characters, and she puts out a lot of damage. Now, I will caution you about this unit. Earlier in this video, I told you about how there's a tile rework system coming. In that tile rework system, all the elements get lots of cool, fun new toys to play with, but Mika Team just kind of forgot about the physical element and didn't really give them much to play with. So while all the other elements and teams are having lots of new DPS combos, fun interactions between the tiles, the physical team is just kind of sitting around, kind of twiddling their thumbs. And this, to me, is a big cautionary flag. The physical team on the CN side has really hard fallen off. You can use some of these units alone. Like for example, AK-15, Cheyanne, they're just going to put out big numbers by themselves, especially if you have high segments of them. But their future potential right now is very, very questionable. I will caution you against getting this character. If you really like her, that's fine. Once again, use her. Does a lot of damage, you know, still kind of competitive in certain team builds. You just kind of have to do a lot of babysitting with her. But like I said, be cautious. This until Mika decides that they want to rework how physical units are benefiting from the elemental system, or start introducing some very powerful neural expansion keys for some of these units, I would say it's pretty safe to skip these units. You might be dodging a bullet figuratively in the future. If you're still dead set on getting her anyway, like I said earlier, she's a DPS unit, so that means she's going to be either segment 0 or segment 6. Don't stop anywhere in the middle. All of her fortification segments just increase her damage in intermediate steps. There's nothing that changes her playstyle or anything like that worth considering. So, like I said, if you're going to invest segments into her, just go all the way. This recommendation also extends to her signature weapon. It doesn't have any special team building considerations. It's just very strong for her personally. Helps her do a lot of damage, about 10 to 15% over some of the other signature weapon options that are out there, like Macchiato's rifle, for example, and a little more than that for some of the free-to-play options like Samosec. But once again, you probably won't even consider this option unless you're really trying to min-max her personal damage. And once again, to be honest, these tickets are probably better spent on other characters. Alongside Cheyanne, running in the same patch for part 2 of Dawnforger, is General Liu. Now, General Liu is also a rifle character, but she has a much better future ahead of her. Not only does she have an actual element attached to her, in this case Hydro, she has an interesting damage scaling formula that uses HP instead of attack power. Now, when paired with Springfield, the other HP scaling character in the game, you get a very powerful synergistic duo that can just dump buckets of damage on targets. She also plays nice with a lot of the other Hydro units' special abilities, such as having a pet, in this case a mechanical warhorse, and taking multiple actions in a turn, similar to how Niketa works. This is somewhat of a downside, however. Since you're required to run Springfield to enable the damage of General Liu, and neither one of them generate tiles in their base forms, it really limits your team building flexibility. In most future teams with General Liu, you're going to end up running mono Hydro, and it'll be a team full of summoned units. While it is competitive with many of the other mono element teams, it's just not as flexible because you're going to be stuck in that one team build. Overall, as befitting of her personality, she is a very high maintenance unit and requires a lot of investment in special attachments, teammates, and segments. If you can afford all that, however, you will be rewarded with a very powerful damage dealer who can breathe new life into the Hydro team. When it comes to talking about breakpoints for Liu, she's a little unusual. While the usual statement of segment 0 or segment 6 does hold true, for the modest investment of her first segment and her weapon, you can get a very sizable boost in her DPS, doubling it over her base form. For reference, at this level of investment, you would easily see her outperform a completely maxed total with her weapon, and in an ideal team, even come close to a segment 6 Niketa. As far as weapons, you do actually need her weapon since it's the only rifle in the game that has HP as the main stat instead of attack, and without it, you're going to see a very large drop in her personal damage, anywhere from like 20 to 30%. At segment 6 in a full Hydra team, she can easily match other top DPS, including OTS 14. However, once again, outside of a Hydra team, you're going to see rather lackluster performance. Moving on to Sextans. As a GFL2 original character, Sextans comes out swinging with not only an awesome design, but a new team building format. She has a dual support for both electric units and sword units. Sextans herself is a powerful unit, but she kind of lives in a weird space. When being on an electric team as a support, she pulls the team away from the old positive-negative charge system and more towards brute force damage. This means that a lot of the electric teams in the future still use Segment 6 Leva, but they trade Lena for Sextans and OTS 14. This kind of like morphs the team into like a weird dual hybrid DPS core of OTS 14 and Leva, and then Sextans as the team buffer. Right now, this team is kind of in a weird spot, and I really expect it to change once the next electric unit comes out, but we just kind of have no idea when that's going to be. Meanwhile, there's a perfectly viable team that I'm going to be calling the Three Musketeers of Hive Segment, Sextans, Faelynn, and Welrod. The amplification that Sextans gives to Blaine units is great for both budget and whale teams. At Segment 0, Sextans, and Segment 0, Faelynn, they both deal respectable damage, and at Segment 6, these two become an absolute powerhouse. Welrod is just kind of there to fit the theme and kind of look cool, but God forbid we ever get another strong sword user. This team might be absolutely insane. If you're looking to build a more unique team, Sextans is a great unit and fits both team types, but she's just not as universal as, say, a unit like Loreley. Fortification segments have a few breakpoints for her. Segment 0, as mentioned, is just like a great budget option that boosts the team's DPS around 10 to 20%, while also bringing all the important things such as healing, defense down, and stability damage. At Segment 3, however, the buffs get a little stronger, adding about another 10 to 15% team-wide, and capping with another large personal damage buff at Segment 6, with a smaller 15% blade damage buff for the team. At Segment 6, at this point, you will see Sextans being a full-on DPS unit, pretending to be a support unit. As far as her weapon, it's not required at low investment. Any weapon really can work. You might see a small personal DPS loss of around 10% if you don't have her signature. However, you will be missing out on the team-wide buffs, which include a rather powerful 10% crit damage buff. Next up is Sopdog the Top Dog. And she is Mika's first attempt at a dual element character, which is slightly different than OTS's 14's Omni element. And she's just a nice unit. I feel like halfway through her design, they realized it wasn't going to work for technical reasons, such as like sorting elemental menus and applying gunsmoke buffs, blah, blah, blah. So they just said, whatever, let's just make her an ice unit and let her do fire damage now and then. While she can switch modes between fire and ice and create tiles for both, her performance can vary a lot depending on the team. The majority of her damage comes from when she's in ice mode, and because of that, it means you're going to have like a really hard time buffing both her damage types. Unless you say you have a unit like Segment 2 Loreley, who can buff both ice and fire damage, huh? Starting to see why I was suggesting her? Well, the good news for Soppo is that despite this weird design choice, she gets to ride on the incredibly overtuned ice team combo of Alva, her future Neural Key, and OTS 14. On the CN side, currently the ice team of Soppo, Robella, Alva, OTS 14, and Loreley, when totally maxed out, is putting up some of the highest numbers in the game. Now, no mortal man needs such power.
Looking upon these frail creatures, one would not think that they could contain such power. One could rule the universe with it.
But it is good to use as a reference point versus other teams and their damage output. Now, I know a lot of people really like Soppo and they're just kind of looking for an excuse to max her out, so don't worry, you're in good hands. Just keep in mind that her high performance teams are rather limited. As a DPS unit, she holds true to the Segment 0 or Segment 6 standard, and her weapon is actually rather replaceable. There's many similar ARs in the game, including Klukai's and OTS 14s. You won't see very much of a damage difference between these and her signature one. Our next unit is P90. Oops, wrong game. Our next unit is P90. God damn it, wrong game again. P90, now known as Mityl. What the fuck is that name? Is a Hydro Sentinel that specializes in creating Hydro tiles for reactions and summoning holograms of herself. These summons have lots of synergy with other Hydra units such as General Liu and Springfield, but since she is a traditional attack scaling unit, she can fit a lot easier into other teams that can take advantage of her tile generation. Currently, she's a very solid unit that when she's used in a mono Hydra team, she deals damage very similar to other top end characters, but she has the added flexibility of being able to move to other teams. As more and more tile-centric characters are released, I expect to see more and more use of her. If you play Hydro or have heavily invested units like Springfield Segment 6, she is a great unit to pick up. If you're interested in tile reactions, such as Hydro Fire teams who produce steam tiles, which already had to get nerfed one time, it's a no-brainer. For many players trying to transition out of the Chongju Tololo starter package, she fits perfectly. For fortification segments, once again, Segment 0 or Segment 6, but it should be noted that her Segment 1, while not as big of a damage increase as a unit like General Liu, it does allow her to apply Defense Down 2, which could be very relevant for people who don't have or are looking to replace Florence from the Hydro team. For weapons, while her signature does look really cool, the greatest of all time, Svarog, is right there. It's right there. So, personal damage won't suffer too much for not having her signature weapon. Welrod. Welrod is a bulwark unit. Okay, moving on. For real though, Welrod lovers, cover your ears. I'm about to seriously disrespect her. This character is the easiest skip I've seen since Jiawei. As far as I can tell, the whole reason that she exists is only for the new tower mode. She takes big hits, then converts a portion of that damage into damage over time on herself, which allows you to heal through it easier. And then she can do extra damage based on the amount that she has absorbed. The problem is literally everything. Normal content does no damage at all, and she doesn't really synergize with any other team or unit. If you are like one of the 10 people who are going to be tower maxing, then whatever, you probably don't even need my advice anyways. Go for it, have fun. Everybody else, just do yourself a favor and skip this unit. It's always sad to see a unit mishandled this badly, but at this point, I'm just kind of numb to it. Finally, we get to talk about what I wanted to talk about. Faelynn is a corrosion sentinel who will go down in the legends as the Klukai killer. Well, not really. She does match or out DPS Klukai at segment 6, but she doesn't need all of the team building. Klukai requires Lind, OTS 14, and Basti at a minimum, but Faelynn kind of only requires a tile generator. Most of her damage comes from a very powerful ult, which does a multi-hitting attack, and the only other requirement is that somebody generates tiles to trigger her other AoE attacks. The best part is that these can be any tiles, not just corrosion tiles. This allows her to slot into many different teams, and while she won't be as turbocharged as in mono corrosion, her DPS will still be very high, competing with many other units in that element with their customized team. Put her in mono fire, put her in mono water, put her in some sort of eldritch abomination of random tile generators and blade units, whatever. The more interesting question with her is that since many people likely already have a full corrosion team, do you need her at all? Well, have you considered having 2 full corrosion teams? If you have heavily invested into the Klukai Lind combo, then you could also just split and run 2 different teams. Lind, Klukai, and Mityl being the core of one team, and Fetusa, Faelynn, and Basti running the core as the other. You can borrow OTS 14 for both of these teams. Right now, I feel like due to the raw power that she has and the ease of team building around her, she's one of the best choices for high investment. And yes, I am very biased. I will temper my own hype, however, and remind everyone, including myself, that the power creep in this game has been non-stop, and that I would not be surprised at all to see the next unit casually pass her up in every single way. Fortification segments, it's segment 6, there are no other options. Or you could segment 0 if you're a horrible person, whatever. And I guess you'll probably also need a weapon suggestion, but do you remember what I said earlier? Your unit can take advantage of this. Yeah, she has a skill that qualifies. So the difference between OTS 14s and her AR is like 1%. Oh my gosh, we did it. We got through every single character from our current release all the way up until what Cheyanne side has. I'm sure the very next character that they release on Cheyanne side will invalidate half the things I just said, but whatever. As of right this very moment when I'm recording this, we are all caught up with information. I'm going to quickly talk about units that you might want to consider again on reruns. There's only a couple ones, to be honest. There's that big banner that's coming up. The only ones that are really worth your time grabbing are Springfield and Alva, maybe Klukai. Springfield continues to see lots of powerful use, especially with characters like Liu and Mityl. Her segment 1 continues to be very powerful, and while it doesn't make such a night and day difference as it does for Tolol, the newer units do benefit from it, and they do get a sizable damage increase from the extra confectants that it generates. In addition to that, if you have a mid to higher segment Springfield, you'll see more and more value out of that as well. Thanks to her fixed key, she's now contributing a sizable amount of damage to the team, and her segment 5, which increases the duration of her ult one more turn, allows it to be up the entire fight. This really helps amp units like General Liu, really helps turbocharge the DPS for the Hydro team. If you have a couple segments in Springfield and you're looking to add a couple more, it is a good long-term investment. You will see a lot of use out of her segment 5 and segment 6. And I don't see her going anywhere anytime soon. Alva is another unit that you will see a lot of use for going forward. As I explained, her neural expansion key is incredibly powerful, and she's worth getting at segment 0 at the very least. Currently, there's still no one who can take advantage of her segment 2. Great design, Mika. But future units might change that. As I mentioned before, Klukai continues to be a very strong performer on the Corrosion team, and if you're heavily invested into that team, or maybe you want to run 2 teams with the addition of Faelynn, she's also not a horrible option if you want to finish grabbing more segments on her. Along those same lines, if you didn't grab Basti, I would highly suggest grabbing her on the rerun, especially for Corrosion teams. She is still just a well-rounded unit. For almost every other unit in the game, there's really no reason to go back and grab them. Due to power creep, it's almost always better to just save your tickets up and grab the newer, shinier units that are being released. If you guys managed to make it this far into the video, thank you so much. It took a lot of time and a lot of research in order to get all the information for this video, and I really hope it can serve as a good roadmap for the next 4 to 6 months. If I missed anything or something wasn't clear, feel free to ask in the comments. I'll do my best to answer it. You're also more than welcome to come to my stream that I do here on YouTube and ask questions. I will be happy to discuss it during the stream as well. That pretty much wraps this video up, so thanks again for joining me, and I will catch you guys in the next video. See ya!